For tens of thousands of Americans with crippled or non-existent immune systems, a drug called immune globulin, IG, can be the difference between life and death. Fact is, immune globulin has become so vital that it's now being prescribed for dozens of different illnesses, many of them affecting children whose lives could be in danger without their regular dose of IG. So, when IG suddenly became hard to find, a lot of patients, young and old, along with their doctors and pharmacists, became frightened and angry too. They want to know whether someone, someplace in the supply chain, is cynically manipulating the IG market just to increase profits.
I think there are vultures out there in the blood supply. I think there are people who are making money off the lives of American kids.
Dr. Arthur Kaplan, a medical ethicist at the University of Pennsylvania, heads a U.S. government advisory panel that is investigating why American kids, like Elaine DePrince's son Teddy, are having trouble getting IG. Without it, Teddy could die.
My Teddy has no immunity to measles, mumps, chickenpox, polio, any childhood illnesses.
Why?
Because he no longer produces antibodies. And
So he needs immune globulin.
He needs immune globulin, which contains these antibodies.
Several months ago, she got a call from the company that had been supplying Teddy with his monthly dose of intravenous IG.
And they said, "Oh, Mrs. DePrince, we hate to tell you, but we can't get immune globulin for Teddy this month." And I was panic-struck.
So to save her son, Mrs. DePrince resorted to the ghoulish task of calling the families of patients who had died in search, hopefully, of their leftover IG.
And sadly enough, I used the immune globulin that was given to me by the grandmother of a young boy with hemophilia who died of AIDS.
Yet another case of shortage. Dr. Charlotte Cunningham Rundles, an immunologist at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, is also having trouble finding enough IG.
This is the one that's in short supply is the problem, yeah.
She says her hospital has to infuse about 100 patients a month with it.
We have no confirmed shipments right now, even for next week. And it's been very much this way since, I would say, November, perhaps. We don't know next week whether we'll have enough to give to each patient.
At any given time in the United States, in a children's hospital, someone is trying to make a decision about which child is going to get IVIG, immunoglobulin, in that hospital because there isn't enough of it. They're going to be making triage decisions about this vital substance.
Triage decisions being this one gets it and
that one doesn't. And will that person be dead the next morning? Probably not that fast. But are they at risk of dying because they didn't get it? Absolutely.
Investigators wonder why IG is so hard to find because America is the world's leading manufacturer of IG, and because there's no shortage of human blood plasma, the raw material used to make the drug. Unlike volunteer blood donors who are not paid, plasma donors usually get about $15 to $20 each time they give plasma. With money as their incentive, almost 2 million Americans give plasma about 13 million times a year. The drug companies buy this plasma and then turn it into drugs like IG, which can end up costing patients as much as several $1,000s every month. To learn why the drug is so hard to get, we wanted to talk to the companies that make IG in the U.S., Bayer, Baxter Healthcare, Centeon, Alpha Therapeutic, but none of them would talk to us on camera. So we went to a scientific conference to ask Alpha's Vice President, Sue Preston, why the manufacturers talk to us.
I don't really have a comment on that.
The manufacturers eventually referred us to Jan Bolt, who runs their trade association in Washington.
It's a great concern to all of us working in this industry. Our member companies work 7 days per week, 24 hours a day to manufacture enough product and to deliver them to those patients in critical need.
Mr. Bolt says the drug has simply become too popular as more doctors are prescribing it for more diseases. And it is not easy, he says, to turn it out in sufficient bulk. But there's another reason that IG is hard to find in this country. We have found that the U.S. companies that make it have been quietly shipping about 1/5 of it, or nearly $100 million worth, overseas every year.
I do wonder why my son will be deprived of plasma and it's being shipped to Japan or Europe.
We put that question to Dr. Michael Friedman, the top official at the Food and Drug Administration, which regulates the blood plasma industry.
Why abroad? If there's a shortage in the United States, please explain to me why so much of what is manufactured here in the United States goes abroad.
The companies that are producing these products are either partly owned or have very close financial relationships with foreign manufacturers, foreign organizations, and they serve a worldwide clientele. The Food and Drug Administration has no authority, no regulatory control over where these products are shipped.
But the industry sees nothing wrong with exporting immune globulin made from blood plasma that comes from Americans, even if it is in short supply here.
If you're a patient in the United States, Europe, or elsewhere, you need treatment, you get the treatment. We're all children of the same God.
That may be true, but so is another fact. IG commands higher prices in some countries outside the United States, although Mr. Bolt, the industry spokesman, says he has no idea just what IG costs or sells for.
But you certainly have a knowledge of whether it's being sold for more elsewhere.
I told you, I'm not aware of any price situation for immunoglobulins per gram or whatever.
Well, it's my understanding, Mr. Bolt, that in 1996, which is the most recent year available, intravenous immune globulin, on average, sold for 15% more in Europe than in the United States, and about 150% more in Japan than in the United States. What's that all about?
Well, first of all, I can tell you that we are not involved in any of the prices you mentioned, and I'm not aware of all the differences.
There is no indication that the companies have increased their overseas shipments since the shortage began. And Mr. Bolt says the manufacturers haven't raised their prices significantly in the U.S., but there is no question that some people have sought to exploit the shortage for profit. While people like Mrs. DePrince must search the country for IG,
Do you know of anybody who might have immune globulin at home?
we found that some brokers or middlemen are selling the drug at hugely inflated prices. When Pitt County Memorial Hospital in Greenville, North Carolina began running low on immune globulin, the price they had to pay went from $15 a gram to $69 a gram. And then recently a broker, Taylor Pharmaceuticals, tried to sell the hospital a brand of IG not made by one of the 4 U.S. companies for $125 a gram.
But somebody apparently is making a killing off the shortage.
Isn't that outrageous? And I can assure you that none of America is engaged in these activities.
Taylor Pharmaceutical wouldn't tell us where they bought the IG or how much money they're making on the sale of immune globulin, though they insist their price markups are small. The industry's silence frustrates Dr. Kaplan and others who are seeking to end the shortage.
We don't know if they could make more but choose not to. We don't know if there's an attempt to keep the price up by having it scarce. We actually know very little, because what we're talking about here is large international companies trading across national boundaries who feel accountable to anyone.
We asked the FDA's Dr. Friedman about Dr. Kaplan's complaint that he cannot get the information he needs from the industry.
Art Kaplan told us this, quote, "We actually don't know what's going on with respect to these blood products because we are not getting the truth from the blood industry."
I know that the Food and Drug Administration does not have good, accurate, up-to-date information about supplies or demand or cost.
This is the chairman of the government's Committee on Blood Safety and Availability.
I understand. And our access to information is no better in some ways than his.
But from a source outside the agency, we found this internal FDA memo from February of this year, in which the agency says it has identified, quote, very large inventories of intravenous immune globulin. Clearly, they complained, the large inventories are not reaching U.S. consumers. Mr. Bolt says he cannot comment on that. As for a similar letter the FDA sent to a member of Congress,
the FDA said this, quote, "Supply disruptions also may have occurred due to stockpiling or other market phenomena." Is that a fact?
I'm not aware of that.
Mr. Bolt denies that the industry is stockpiling IG. Even so, Representative Christopher Shays, a Connecticut Republican, believes the blood industry may know more than they're admitting. He has studied the blood plasma industry, and he worries that the industry is using the shortage to get the FDA to go easy on them.
The shortage is critical, but we're not convinced that it's not being manufactured by the companies themselves.
The shortage?
Correct. But one of the things we're very concerned about is that you don't have shortage blackmail, that you don't have...
Shortage blackmail? What do you mean?
We need the supply of this product. And if there's a shortage, the FDA is coming to them and saying, we need you to produce more. They in turn say, well, you just aren't allowing us the ability to produce the amount we need to.
Shays is referring to the FDA's new aggressive regulation of the blood plasma industry. Back in the 1970s and 80s, thousands of Americans got AIDS and hepatitis from contaminated plasma products. And the FDA wants to prevent the spread of new diseases.
Bottom line, we had a threat of AIDS early on. We weren't alert to it. We didn't police the blood supply the way we should have.
And the FDA doesn't want that to happen again. In the last year or so, all 4 manufacturers of IG have run afoul of FDA inspectors who found flaws in their drug manufacturing process.
And yes, all 4.
That's a very serious record, isn't it?
It is something that we're very concerned about. It's something that we're focusing a lot of attention on.
But the FDA is also keenly aware that they have to get enough immune globulin to those who need it. So the shortage has already forced the FDA to okay the emergency release of IG that had been originally withdrawn for fear it may be infected with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. That's an infectious and always fatal brain dementia similar to mad cow disease. Though World Health authorities don't believe the disease can be spread through blood or its plasma component, for no cases have been documented, they're not absolutely sure either.
There's so many questions about Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. We understand only a very little bit about how it's spread. We don't have a technique for identifying those people at risk yet. And most importantly, we don't have a technique for sterilizing blood components to get rid of that infectious agent.
Mrs. DePrince is troubled that the government would take a chance with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, no matter how slight. For 2 of her sons, both of them hemophiliacs, have already died after getting blood plasma tainted with AIDS from the same manufacturer who are now selling IG to her son Teddy.
In 1982, the same manufacturer said, well, we're not sure that this new disease called AIDS is transmitted through plasma.
Mm-hmm. But that's how Teddy got.
And that's exactly how Teddy got his AIDS, and that's why I have lost 2 sons.
Is any part of this shortage calculated? Dr. Kaplan's committee begins a new round of hearings tomorrow morning to try to find out why IG is so scarce, and Congressman Shays, same early next month.